So before I start, I just want to preface that I'm going to be reading from my computer because I've written a lot of this down so I don't forget anything. So if I'm not looking straight at the camera, that's why. So I'm just going to get right into it. So pesticides are anything from herbicides, insecticides, rodenticides, and they protect crops by controlling weeds, insect and animal infestation, and fungal or mold diseases. And pesticides can be absorbed by plants through the leaves and the roots, and they can be taken up by the plants and moved through other parts of the plant as well. So there are different types of pesticides, even different from what's mentioned above. So like insecticides, which kill insects, herbicides, which kill unwanted plants like weeds, fungicides to control mold and mildew, and then larvicides, which help control larvae. And so pesticides are widely used in agriculture. They save farmers from a lot of labor and provide a higher yield. So this means that pesticides can be the difference of a farmer saving a crop or losing it. Because if insects were to take over and eat on that crop and just destroy it, they've lost the whole thing. They lost income they would have made from that. So they are really important to the agricultural world. So they're used in agriculture to kill weeds and insects. So without the use of pesticides, crop losses can be due to pests and diseases would be between 30 and 50% depending on the crop being grown. So that is huge. Pesticides are really bad though. They are poison and they can harm just more than the pest they are intended for. They are toxic, and being exposed to pesticides can cause a lot of health effects such as cancer, Alzheimer's, and even birth defects. So these are just some of the chronic diseases. Now some of the acute health defects include stinging eyes, rashes, nausea, dizziness, and even death. So there are some alternatives to pesticides. This would be like biocontrol, which is biological control, polyculture, which is companion planting, and natural barriers or predators. So biocontrol is the reduction of pest populations by natural enemies and involves an active human role. So this is where you purposely bring in a certain like wasp, and they help pollinate the flowers and the plants to help keep off other pests. And then polyculture is where you plant partner plants in one crop to naturally repel specific plants. So an example of this would be, let's say in one crop you're going to have tomatoes and cabbage. The tomatoes will repel diamond-backed moth larvae that eat the cabbage, and so by planting these two different plants in one crop, you are essentially saving that entire crop and not having to use pesticides because of the natural pesticide from the tomatoes per se. And then other natural barriers would be planting certain types of grasses that beetles and spiders really like, and these will protect the nearby crops from aphid pests. And so pesticides should really be limited and regulated. I did some research, and pesticides are currently regulated by the Environmental Protection Agency, and all pesticides are reviewed every 15 years to ensure that they meet standards. And I'm just not sure about this time frame. I think it needs to be about every 5 years, because that just seems like a long time that a lot could happen, a lot could change. And so that's something that I would maybe look into to see if that could be reduced, because I think that would help a lot as well. More limitations and regulations need to be done though. It makes no sense to me why the United States is so far behind other nations banning harmful pesticides. In a study that compared the United States to the European Union, Brazil, and China, compared to those other countries, the United States is prospectively 72, 17, and 11 pesticides behind. So basically, we still have 72 pesticides in the United States compared to the European Union, 17 pesticides in the United States compared to Brazil, and 11 pesticides in the United States compared to China. They're still approved here that are otherwise banned or in the process of being phased out in those countries. And that to me makes no sense. Why we still have these approved, whereas in other countries they are banned or they're getting rid of them for good. So I think we need to follow these other countries and start banning and phasing out the extremely harmful pesticides for the sake of our farmers and agricultural workers, as it is clear from other countries and from the other three alternatives to pesticides listed above, that there are alternatives to have the fresh produce in for them to be safe and for us to consume. So I just think the United States, we need to do a much better job of using the alternatives and to get rid of these pesticides that are causing so many diseases and harming our hard workers out in the fields, and we just can be doing a whole lot better. And so I think it's time that we start taking this seriously and start banning or phasing out these really harmful pesticides.